Ethan Carter had always been a unique young man. At 20, he had already learned more about technology and programming than many college graduates, but no one knew it. He was just the book delivery guy, that skinny guy in a wrinkled uniform and worn-out sneakers who showed up every day carrying heavy packages to survive. On that rainy afternoon, Ethan was panting up the 20 floors of the SkyLink Systems building, one of the most powerful technology companies in the country. The elevator was broken, and the watch on his wrist showed he was 15 minutes late for the next delivery. He needed to hurry, but something caught his eye as soon as he reached the top floor. The boardroom floor felt like another world. Glass rooms glowed with cold lights, and men and women in ties scurried back and forth, visibly distressed. In the center of the space, a giant screen displayed lines of code flashing by at breakneck speed. My God, this is like a movie, Ethan thought, holding his breath to avoid attracting attention. He discreetly approached the reception desk to deliver the package and waited for someone to sign the receipt. But he couldn't help but look at what was happening. A group of engineers were loudly discussing a bug that was crashing the company's system and causing astronomical losses. Ethan frowned. From where he was, he could see that the code on the screen had a serious problem. They were using a completely inefficient data structure. He blurted out, almost without realizing it, "They're using a simple binary tree. That's why it's crashing." The receptionist, a blonde woman in high heels with a sour expression, looked up and snorted. "Oh sure. The book delivery guy is a programming genius. Want to come in and fix it too?" Ethan blushed, but kept his eyes fixed on the code. The solution seemed as obvious to him as breathing. A simple reorganization and the use of distributed hashing would solve this in minutes. That's when a group of executives hurried through the lobby. Ethan, his heart racing, summoned courage and called out, "Excuse me, I think I know what's causing the problem." The group stopped, as if an alien had spoken. The company's CEO, Victor Lancaster, a tall gray-haired man in an impeccable suit, turned slowly. His gaze was icy. "Repeat what you said, kid," Victor asked, his tone almost amused. "I said I know what's causing the system error. It's a flaw in the search logic. If you change your approach, the system will stabilize." The silence was absolute. All eyes turned to the young man in the cheap uniform and torn backpack. And then, Victor began to laugh. A low, almost cruel laugh. "Do you have any idea how many doctors and engineers have spent months trying to solve this? Do you really think a delivery boy will solve what they couldn't?" Ethan felt his face burn, but he didn't back down. "I'm just asking for a chance to try. If I fail, you can even laugh at me." Victor crossed his arms and arched an eyebrow. This will be fun." Victor looked Ethan up and down, as if confronting an insect that dared to speak. The engineers and executives around him exchanged muffled chuckles. Some shook their heads in disbelief. "Okay, kid," Victor said, his tone thick with irony. "Since you're so confident, here's a challenge. Solve the problem in 15 minutes. If you succeed, I'll pay you a cash prize and applaud you, right here in front of everyone." The people around him laughed even harder. The idea of a simple delivery man solving a problem that dozens of professionals hadn't managed in months seemed like a cruel joke. But then Victor's tone changed, becoming darker. He leaned forward and spoke softly, so only Ethan could hear. "Now, if you fail, your mother won't set foot in this building again. I'm tired of seeing that cleaning lady walking around here like she owns the place." The words landed like stones in Ethan's chest. His hand clenched into a fist. He could handle any humiliation, but he couldn't bear to see his mother, Helena, pay the price for her daring. "Do you accept the challenge, or will you run like a coward?" Victor taunted, raising his voice for all to hear. Ethan took a deep breath. He remembered all the nights he'd stayed up studying programming in public libraries, while his mother cleaned empty classrooms. He also remembered the times his colleagues had called him a loser, simply for not having new clothes or a state-of-the-art cell phone. He raised his head and replied firmly, "I accept. But if I succeed, you promise never to humiliate anyone in this company again." Victor's laughter echoed through the lobby. "You have courage, I admit. Then let's see if you have talent too." The group moved like a wave, heading for the main room, where the big screen it showed the flawed code. The eyes were divided between curiosity and sarcasm. As he walked, Ethan noticed the whispers around him. "This kid is going to be embarrassed. I bet he doesn't even know how to turn on a computer. It'll be fun to watch." In the back, a brown-haired woman with a watchful eye Sofia Rivera, a journalist for a technology magazine, had arrived to cover the system failure. She narrowed her eyes at Ethan, intrigued by his courage. In the control room, Victor pointed to the terminal with a cruel smile. "Here it is, genius. Show the world what you're capable of." Ethan pulled his old cell phone from his pocket, the same one he used for night school, and connected it to the system. Before starting, he looked at the CEO and said calmly, "When this is over, I want everyone here to remember that they judged a book by its cover." Victor laughed. "Get started, kid. The clock is ticking." The silence in the room was almost unbearable. All eyes were fixed on Ethan, who sat before the monitor with his heart racing but his expression calm. He felt the weight of the moment. It wasn't just about proving himself right. It was about protecting his mother from a cruel injustice. Victor glanced at the gold watch on his wrist and announced mockingly, 15 minutes, kid. Show the world your talent." Ethan closed his eyes for a moment and took a deep breath. He remembered being just 12 years old, sitting in the corner of an empty conference room, solving logic problems while his mother mopped the floor with her calloused hands. It was then that he'd begun to learn, picking up forgotten handouts from desks and absorbing technical chatter from engineers who hadn't even noticed him. Now, everyone was watching him ... and judging him. He opened the code editor and began typing with surprising agility. His hands trembled slightly at first, but soon his fingers danced confidently across the keyboard, as if they'd done this 1,000 times before. "What's he doing?" "He's just pretending," whispered one of the engineers, frowning. "He must be faking it," replied another, crossing his arms, waiting for disaster. But it wasn't a faking it. In less than 5 minutes, Ethan identified the main bottlenecks in the system: a binary tree that multiplied haphazardly, and a linear search algorithm that made the operation slow and vulnerable to crashes. He smirked. "You're trying to build a mansion on quicksand," he muttered to himself. Victor, impatient, stamped his foot. 10 minutes left, he announced triumphantly, certain that he would soon see Ethan embarrassed and expelled. However, something began to change. Dr. Collins, the lead engineer, leaned over to look at the code on Ethan's monitor and widened his eyes. "Wait, that's not possible," he whispered. Ethan had eliminated hundreds of unnecessary lines and replaced the flawed logic with a simplified, efficient architecture. It was as if he had transformed a chaotic maze into a straight road. He's reorganizing everything," another engineer muttered, unable to hide his astonishment. Victor noticed the commotion and approached, frowning. "What's going on here?" he asked coldly. "Mr. Lancaster," Dr. Collins said hesitantly, "if this works, we're looking at something brilliant." Victor narrowed his eyes, feeling a stab of anger. 5 minutes, he shouted, trying to regain control. Ethan finished typing the last line of code and took his hands off the keyboard. "Done. You can test it." The room was silent for a second. Then Dr. Collins started the simulation. The screen flashed, and numbers began cascading down. The system processed 200,000 simultaneous requests and didn't crash. No errors, no failures. The group of engineers exchanged shocked looks. "This is impossible," one of them said, almost in a whisper. Ethan looked at Victor calmly and said, "System performance has improved by 95%. Server costs will be cut in half." Victor felt his face heat up, fury rising within him. "That was luck," he said through gritted teeth. Or, ... "you stole that solution from someone." Ethan stood slowly, his gaze steady. "I can do it again, if you want." From scratch, the room was plunged into a stifling silence. The sound of the server fans and the faint ticking of the watch on Victor's wrist seemed deafening at that moment. The engineer still stared at the screen, in disbelief at the result. Ethan remained standing, staring hard at the CEO, as murmurs began to fill the room. "He ... he really did it ... whispered a young programmer, visibly startled by what she had just witnessed. "In less than 15 minutes ... double quotes," said another engineer, shaking his head. Victor was breathing heavily, his face flushed as if he had just run a marathon, his eyes fixed on Ethan. They burned with fury and humiliation. That was luck," he shouted, his voice trembling. "Or you stole that solution from someone." Ethan was unfazed. His eyes never wavered from the man trying to crush him with words. "I can rebuild everything from scratch if you want, and I can also explain every line of code to your team." he said, with a calmness that seemed even more provocative to Victor. That was the last straw. The CEO slammed his hand down on the table, causing one of the water glasses to fall and shatter on the floor. "Shut up, you insolent brat," he shouted, his voice echoing through the room. The audience of employees and executives took a few steps back, surprised by the outburst. Many had begun discreetly recording with their cell phones since Ethan began programming, but now all of their cameras were trained directly on Victor. "I will not allow a black delivery man to humiliate me in front of my team," Victor roared, his tone thick with venom. The words hung in the air like thunder. For a moment, no one breathed. The receptionist, once so haughty, widened her eyes and took a step back. Even Dr. Collins, who had worked with Victor for years, looked shocked. Ethan felt a chill run down his spine, but he didn't back away. A faint smile formed at the corner of his mouth. Interesting, because, according to the law, racial discrimination in the workplace is a crime, and you just confessed, in front of dozens of witnesses. Victor blinked, as if waking from a nightmare. That's when he realized that at least 10 people had their cell phones raised, filming every word. "Security," he shouted, his voice wavering. "Get that kid out of here, now, and take his mother with you. I never want to see those two's faces again." 2 security guards started to approach Ethan, but hesitated when they noticed the tension in the air and the number of cell phones pointed at them. Ethan didn't move. His heart was pounding, but his voice was firm. "Mr. Lancaster, every word you're saying just digs your own hole deeper." Victor's eyes widened in fury, and he raised his index finger to point at the young man. "You have no idea who you're dealing with, kid. I built this company from nothing. I can take you and your mother down." Ethan took a deep breath and replied, without raising his voice, "And I can take you down, using only the truth." The murmurs grew louder. The cameras continued to roll. The image of Victor Lancaster, the arrogant and previously untouchable CEO, began to fade before everyone's eyes. Victor Lancaster's face was red as a beacon. The veins in his neck bulged as he shouted orders to the security guards, but no one moved. Everyone remained motionless, eyes wide, cell phones tightly in their hands, recording every second of that historic scene. Ethan remained standing, serene, despite the chaos around him. Inside, his heart was beating so fast it felt like it was about to burst from his chest. But he remembered his mother Helena's words. "When someone tries to humiliate you, it's because they're afraid of what you're capable of." Victor, still trying to regain control, pointed at Ethan and yelled, "This will end here. You and your mother are finished. I make one call, and you'll never have peace in this country again." And that's when a firm voice echoed in the room. "With all due respect, Mr. Lancaster, I think you should calm down." It was Dr. Collins, the chief engineer, who had remained silent until then. He stood slowly and looked at the CEO with a disappointed look. "Everyone here saw what happened, and everyone here heard your words." Victor turned his head, indignant. "What are you insinuating, Collins? Are you going to side with that brat?" Collins crossed his arms. "I'm not on anyone's side. I'm on the side of the truth." The whispers grew louder, and a young employee in the background, also filming the scene, whispered to her colleague next to her, "This video is going to explode online." And she was right. At that very moment, Sofia Rivera, the journalist covering the system failure, had already posted the video on her social media with the caption, "Book delivery man solves $1 million problem in minutes and is humiliated by the CEO of SkyLink Systems." In less than an hour, the video had been shared thousands of times. People on Twitter, Instagram, and TikTok began commenting furiously. "Blatant racism in one of the largest companies in the country. Who is this kid? He's a genius. Justice for Ethan and his mother. #SkyLink racist." Victor reached for his phone in his pocket and saw the notifications exploding. His face grew even paler when he opened the video and realized his words were there, uncut, being watched by millions. This is a conspiracy," he shouted, but his voice no longer held the same authority as before. "I'm going to sue you all for illegal recording." Ethan looked at him and, with the calm of someone who had already won the first battle, he said, "You can try, Mr. Lancaster, but I think the whole world already knows who you really are." Victor felt the ground disappear from under his feet. For the first time in years, he wasn't sure how to escape a situation. Meanwhile, the receptionist, once so arrogant, was looking at Ethan with a strange expression, a mix of regret and admiration. And then something unexpected happened. Ethan's cell phone vibrated. It was a call from an unknown number. He answered hesitantly. "Hello, Ethan Carter. This is Daniel Forster, an employment lawyer. I saw the video. I want to help you sue SkyLink for discrimination." Ethan switched the phone to his ear and for a moment looked at the CEO. Victor could tell the boy was getting support and that the tide was quickly turning. Victor Lancaster was panicking, but he refused to show weakness. While Ethan talked to the lawyer on the phone, the CEO paced back and forth like a caged lion. "You don't understand," Victor shouted to the surrounding engineers and executives. "This video needs to be deleted before it goes any further. Court, legal, contact the platforms, demand they take it all down." But it was too late. The video had surpassed 2 million views in just 4 hours. In the SkyLink hallways, employees huddled in small groups, watching the scene on their phones and whispering among themselves. Some had looks of shame, others of hope. Ethan, on the other hand, remained calm, but inside, he felt the weight of the moment. As he hung up the phone, he took a deep breath. He knew this was just the first battle in a much larger war. Suddenly, his phone vibrated again. It was a message. "Mr. Carter, my name is Sofia Rivera, an investigative journalist. I'd like to talk to you about SkyLink. I've been collecting evidence of corruption and discrimination within the company for years. Together, we can expose everything." Ethan read the message carefully. It was as if the pieces of a puzzle were beginning to fit together. Perhaps this was the moment to not only defend his mother and himself, but also to end years of injustice. Hidden behind SkyLink's glass walls, across the room, Victor was receiving an angry call from the chairman of the board. "Lancaster, what's going on? The media is all over us, and our investors are threatening to abandon the company." Victor tried to maintain his composure. "He's just a kid. I'm already taking care of this. Trust me." But as soon as he hung up, his expression of confidence disappeared. The CEO looked at one of the security guards and spoke in a low voice. "I want you to find out everything about this Ethan Carter. Where he lives, who his friends are, and if necessary, break this kid." The security guard nodded, but hesitated before leaving. Even he seemed uncomfortable with the order. Meanwhile, Ethan went to the lobby, where he found his mother, Helena, sitting on a bench, wearing a cleaning uniform and a weary expression. She looked up, and upon seeing her son, realized something had happened. "Ethan, what have you done?" He sat beside her and, holding her hand firmly, replied, "Maybe. I started a revolution." Helena sighed, her eyes welling with worry. "Son, you don't know who you're messing with. That man is dangerous." Ethan looked into her eyes, determined. "I know, Mom, but he doesn't know our strength." That night, Ethan and Helena sat at the table in the apartment's small kitchen. The smell of fresh coffee filled the air, but the atmosphere was heavy. Helena turned the cup between her trembling hands, trying to hide her worry. "Son, I worked at that company for 15 years. I know what that man is capable of. Victor Lancaster never loses. Never," she said softly. Ethan held her hand firmly. He never lost because no one had the courage to stand up to him. "Mom, but that's going to change now." It was then that Ethan's cell phone vibrated. It was Sofia Rivera. "Ethan, we need to talk in person. I have enough evidence to bury Victor's career, but I need someone on the inside to confirm it. You could be that person." The next day, they met at a discreet cafe downtown. Sofia was a woman with an intense gaze, her hair tied in a bun, and a folder stuffed with documents on her desk. "The viral video was just the beginning," she said, leaning forward. "I investigated SkyLink for 2 years. I uncovered fraudulent contracts, tax evasion schemes, and pattern of discrimination against black and female employees." Ethan leafed through the papers, his heart pounding as he recognized the names and faces of people his mother had mentioned over the years, her colleagues who had been fired without explanation, or who had suffered harassment. "What do you want me to do?" he asked finally. "I want you to come in at SkyLink and gather internal evidence. Victor will try to destroy you, but if we can expose everything to the board and the media, we can bring down this empire of lies." Ethan took a deep breath. Part of him knew this was dangerous, but he also felt he couldn't back down. "I'm in, but this needs to be done right. No blind revenge. We'll use the truth as our weapon." Sofia smiled. "That's why you're perfect for this." Meanwhile, across town, Victor Lancaster wasn't standing still. In the dim light of his office, he sat with a short man in a black suit and cold eyes. "I need you to investigate every detail of this boy's life, discover his secrets, his weaknesses, and destroy his image before he destroys mine." The man nodded with a dark smile. "Consider it done, Mr. Lancaster." Victor leaned back in his leather chair, his fingers drumming on the desk. "And if necessary, take him down." The cat-and-mouse game had begun. The following days were a test for Ethan. During the day, he continued working as a delivery man and caring for his mother. But at night, he met with Sophia to devise the plan that would bring down Victor Lancaster. Sitting on the sofa in their small apartment, they analyzed every document, every compromising email Sophia had collected. "We have enough evidence to contact the public prosecutor's office, but we need something more solid from within," she said seriously. "Victor will try to cover up the case." Ethan knew every step he took would be dangerous, but one thing kept him steadfast: the look on his mother's face, Helena, who, despite her fear, said, "Son, if justice is to be served, then go all the way." Meanwhile, Victor plotted his counterattack. In his luxurious mansion, the CEO gathered his lawyers and the private investigator. "Have you found anything about the boy?" he asked, his voice thick with impatience. The detective opened an envelope and handed Victor photos. "He meets with a journalist almost every night. They're plotting something. And what's more, I got footage of his mother cleaning restricted rooms at the company in the wee hours of the morning. We can use this to charge her with corporate espionage." Victor smiled, a cold smile that didn't reach his eyes. "Perfect. Let's turn the internet hero into the villain of the story." He then gave an order that froze everyone in the room. "Prepare a press conference. I want every journalist there. I'm going to expose this kid in front of the entire country." Across town, Sophia and Ethan were planning their next move. "Victor is too quiet," Sophia said, frowning. "That's not a good sign." Ethan looked out the window, his thoughts elsewhere. "He's up to something. I know his type. He won't stop until he sees me destroyed." Sophia placed her hand over his. "Then we need to be 2 steps ahead." And they were. 2 days later, Ethan received an unexpected call from SkyLink. "Mr. Carter, CEO Victor Lancaster requests your presence at a meeting with the board and the press. Tomorrow at 10 a.m. He wants to discuss a possible proposal for you to work with the engineering team." Helena heard the call and felt her heart sink. "Ethan... This could be a trap." Ethan looked at his mother, his expression determined. "I know it is, and that's exactly why I'm going." Sophia smiled confidently. "Then it's decided. Tomorrow, Victor Lancaster will try to destroy you, but he'll end up digging his own grave." The SkyLink auditorium was packed. Journalists, photographers, and even some investors eagerly awaited the spectacle Victor Lancaster had promised. The CEO paced the stage, smiling with practiced confidence. "Today you'll see for yourself how an imposter tried to deceive one of the largest companies in the country," he told the audience, his voice reverberating through the microphone. Ethan entered the room with firm steps, despite the tension. Beside him, Sophia walked with a watchful eye, holding a folder with confidential documents. In the back, Helena watched her son, her heart racing. Victor raised his hands, drawing everyone's attention. "Mr. Carter, you claim to have improved our system by 97%. While our experts have analyzed your code and discovered that it's nothing more than a cheap trick. You're a fraud." The audience murmured, and the camera flashes intensified. Victor continued with a venomous smile. "Furthermore, we have evidence that your mother, Mrs. Helena Carter, was spying on restricted areas of the company during the early hours of the morning. It's clear you stole classified information to stage this spectacle." Ethan remained calm. He looked at the audience and then at Victor, who now seemed to be savoring every word. "Finished?" Ethan asked, his voice firm. "Not yet." Victor held up a tablet and, with a tap, displayed photos of Helena cleaning empty offices. "Look, irrefutable proof of espionage." Sophia then stood up, a slight smile on her lips. "If you'll excuse me, I think you're forgetting something very important." The journalist connected her own tablet to the screen. Within seconds, audio and video began to play. "The algorithm is worth at least 20 million on the black market. I can deliver the complete code by the end of the month." Victor's voice echoed through the auditorium. He froze. This is a setup," he shouted, but the audience was already in shock. Sophia didn't stop. Here are the fraudulent contracts, the illegal dismissals, and the evidence of racial discrimination committed by Mr. Lancaster, she said, showing documents exposing years of corruption. Victor tried to react, but the building's security guards were already approaching. Mr. Lancaster, the board has instructed us to escort you out of the building immediately. The CEO's mask of power fell. This is a conspiracy, he shouted, but now no one believed him anymore. Ethan stood and looked Victor directly in the eye. You used your position to crush people like my mother. I used my knowledge to lift up those you tried to destroy. That's the difference between us. Victor was led away by security guards, while the audience gave Ethan a standing ovation. 6 months had passed since that historic day at SkyLink. The video of the final confrontation between Ethan Carter and Victor Lancaster was still circulating on social media, racking up millions of views and being cited as an example of courage and justice. Victor, the man who once seemed untouchable, now lived a completely different reality. Expelled from the company, prosecuted for corruption, discrimination, and corporate espionage, he suffered his downfall in a small apartment on the outskirts of the city. His former friends shunned him on the streets. The golf club had cancelled his membership, and even his ex-wife had taken half his fortune in a divorce. In return, Ethan had become the symbol of a new era. The board of directors, impressed by his genius and ethics, invited him to take on the role of interim CEO while they reorganized SkyLink. He accepted, with one condition: I want every employee, without exception, to be treated with dignity, and the cleaning crews will receive the same respect as any engineer here. Under his leadership, SkyLink not only recovered from financial losses but also tripled its market value in less than a year. The algorithm Ethan developed was being licensed to companies around the world, revolutionizing data processing technology. Helena, now retired with a generous pension, looked proudly at her son as he spoke on stage in the company's auditorium, now renamed the Ethan Carter Innovation Center. When I first walked into this building, I was just the son of a cleaning lady, he said, his voice breaking. But today I'm here to prove that talent, courage, and justice have no color, no uniform, and no titles hanging on the wall. The audience rose to their feet in thunderous applause. At the back of the room, Sofia Rivera watched the scene with a satisfied smile. Her book about the case, From Deliveryman to CEO, The True Story of Ethan Carter, was already a bestseller. As she was leaving, a young journalist asked Ethan, Mr. Carter, if you could give just one message to young people who feel small in the world, what would it be? He looked into the cameras and replied firmly, never let anyone underestimate you. Sometimes, the greatest power lies precisely in being the one no one expected anything